In 1960, 6-year-old Leona Tate walked past screaming, violent mobs to desegregate a New Orleans elementary school. Today, at 71, she fights to protect the exact same voting rights and local infrastructure she marched for as a child. When a community fights the same battle 3 generations later, it reveals that the original legacy lacked a permanent foundation. A negotiated victory without the structural power to enforce it is a temporary truce. Rights that require constant defense have not been fully secured. This state of perpetual resistance keeps a community in a cycle of survival, preventing the transition to succession. This loop is maintained through an attention hijack. Constant manufactured outrage consumes the energy a community needs to build infrastructure, forcing reactions to the latest crisis rather than constructing a permanent future. The focus on moral or emotional arguments often obscures the structural traps operating beneath individual decisions. These architectural forces work to guarantee loss regardless of personal willpower. Warren Buffett identified 5 specific economic loops that operate like the invisible laws of physics. They are environmental traps designed to ensure capital flows out of a community before it can ever be compounded. Outrage is a fleeting emotion, but disenfranchisement and poverty are highly engineered systems. The opposition Leona Tate faced simply modernized its tactics. High-profile physical violence eventually drew federal intervention, so the system evolved into a quiet bureaucracy. It traded ropes and fire for city planning boards, zoning laws, and legislative procedures. These proposed congressional district maps for Texas demonstrate the precision of the modern weapon. Gerrymandering allows for the surgical extraction of resources. Redrawing a single line dictates the flow of local tax dollars, strategically diverting school funding, healthcare, and business investments away from communities. Relying on a politician's pen for fairness reduces a community's political voice to a form of rented permission. Any environment that retains the ultimate power to grant or revoke your permission to participate effectively controls your future. This political containment supports the scarcity tax, an economic engine that forces poverty to cost significantly more than wealth. Without banking infrastructure, residents pay fees just to access their own wages. Lacking savings, they turn to high-interest payday loans for emergencies. High barriers to ownership lead to a lifetime of rent. Each layer of scarcity extracts a premium, siphoning community capital into external systems. This drain is locked in by the linear income ceiling. The standard employment system trades a finite number of human hours for a fixed wage, creating a hard ceiling on earnings that no amount of individual effort can break. The high cost of poverty is a structural fee charged for existing at the bottom of the system. Protests and speeches raise awareness, but they do not house or feed a lineage. The critical question for this generation is what permanent infrastructure is being built beyond the sound of the speech. Escaping the loop requires a counter blueprint. This begins with a civilizational identity rooted in Moorish and Kemetic governance, traditions that maintained complex systems of trade and property for centuries. These architectural relics represent more than aesthetics. They are the physical records of indigenous laws that once governed resource pooling and self-sufficiency. Reclaiming this specific heritage provides a mental framework that exists outside the gravitational pull of localized scarcity. This identity manifests practically as the basket, or group economics. By using the ancient model of pooling capital through cooperatives and lending circles, a community dissolves the scarcity tax through shared ownership of its infrastructure. Breaking the linear ceiling requires the cash flow pillar, the transition from selling labor to packaging knowledge and culture into systems. These assets, like digital products or intellectual property, earn independently of a person's physical presence. Identity anchored in the shared ownership of physical and intellectual institutions cannot be easily uprooted. The compound void makes delayed action mathematically devastating. Time multiplies wealth for those with assets, but it accelerates poverty for those with debt. Every year spent without ownership is a year of exponential growth lost forever. To prevent wealth from leaking out during generational transitions, the MAAT philosophy introduces the never sell doctrine. This framework designates specific holdings as consecrated assets, core land, infrastructure businesses, and intellectual property that are never liquidated. They are held immune to market pressure, allowing wealth to grow exponentially across generations without ever resetting to zero. Passing down this untouchable architecture is the only way to ensure the next generation does not inherit the exact same fate as Leona Tate. Oppression is an engineered design, so freedom must be a built architecture. Outrage is a reaction. Power is a choice